Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Maitreya said, eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as the instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. Purport. The impersonal time factor is the background of the material manifestation as the instrument of the Supreme Lord. It is the ingredient of assistance offered to material nature. No one knows where time began and where it ends, and it is time only which can keep a record of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material manifestation. This time factor is the material cause of creation and is therefore a self-expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Time is considered impersonal, the impersonal feature of the Lord. The time factor is also explained by modern men in various ways. Some accept it almost as it is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, in Hebrew literature, time is accepted as the same spirit as a representation of the Lord. It is stated therein, God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake this in time past unto the fathers by the prophets. End quote. Metaphysically, by the way, I looked it up, I think it's in Romans anyway, it's part of the Bible. Metaphysically, time is distinguished as absolute and real. I'll read that again. Metaphysically, time is distinguished as absolute and real. Absolute time is continuous and is unaffected by the speed or slowness of material things. Time is astronomically and mathematically calculated in relation to speed, change, and life of a particular object. Factually, however, time has nothing to do with the relativities of things. Rather, everything is shaped and calculated in terms of the facility offered by time. Time is the basic measurement of the activities of our senses, by which we calculate past, present, and future. But in factual calculation, time has no beginning and no end. Chanakya Pandit says that even a slight fraction of time cannot be purchased with millions of dollars, and therefore even a moment of time lost without profit must be calculated as the greatest loss in life. Time is not subject to any form of psychology, nor the moments objective realities in themselves, but they are dependent on particular experiences. Therefore, Srila Jiva Goswami concludes that the time factor is intermixed with the activities, actions, and reactions of the external energy of the Lord. The external energy or material nature works under the superintendence of the time factor as the Lord himself, and that is why material nature appears to have produced so many wonderful things in the cosmic manifestation. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10 confirms this conclusion as follows. Maya dyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetu nanena kaunteya jagat viparivartate. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'm going to read the verse one more time, and then we're going to switch over to the PowerPoint And as I said in the beginning, I think it will be helpful if you can lend your attention to the PowerPoint. It might help to clarify some of the points I'm going to attempt to make. Actually, I just read recently, somebody attributes it to Einstein, but I don't think so. Anyway, if you can't explain something complex in a simple way, then you don't know it well enough. So I'll do my best. So again, the verse is Maitreya uvacha guna vyati karakaro nirvishesho pratishtitaha prushastad upadhanam atmanam lilaya srajat, which means, Maitreya said, eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as an instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. All right, so we are switching to okay. Okay, we're switching screens and cameras, I think. Anyways, yeah, so you should see my screen right now. That should have worked. Okay, so I thought I would begin by summarizing. Still, I'm not getting the right screen I need. There. Okay. I thought I'd begin by summarizing the points, or the major points that I'm going to try to attempt to bring out. First one being that time is the impersonal representation of the Lord. So, analogy might be if you find the uniform of a soldier or a military man of whatever rank, even though you're only looking at maybe the gun, the boots, the uniform, uh, even though you can't see the man, you can only see his impersonal representation. Still, you can say something about him. But if you also have an expert military man, such as Maitreya, you can not only tell a little bit, but you can tell a lot. He can point out what the stripes and the oak leaves and the stars, what those all mean. So even by not seeing the man, if you have expert guidance, especially by somebody who is intimately knowledgeable about the military, he can tell you all kinds of things, even though it's not the person himself. Similarly, by the guidance of Maitreya Muni, he is going to enlighten, or at least, let's say, reveal to Vidura, by answering his question about this impersonal instrument of the Lord, which is called time. So the next point is that time is absolute. So I hope, if there's anything that I can convey by this class, is that from the verse and the purport, it's very strongly stated that time is absolute, which is against the modern astrophysics and science of physics. Their contention, which is following Einstein, his general theory of relativity, is that, in fact, time is relative. So time is relative for all things it controls, but time is absolute in the highest metaphysical sense, beyond all things that time controls. It is unchangeable. Very, very important. Even the atomic structure of the universe, which also we have a contention about, according to the Bhagavatam, the atom is called Paramanu. Paramanu infers, it means that it's the smallest unit. So as far as subatomic particles such as electrons and protons and gluons and every other few months are coming up with other subatomic particles. Unless I'm wrong, what I understand from the pages of the Bhagavatam is that Paramanu is the smallest element. There is no subatomic particles. Now, we've never seen an atom. There's powerful microscopes that they say you can see the shadow of an atom, but can't even see the atom directly, what to speak of subatomic particles. But anyway, that is my understanding. I may be wrong, but even the atoms of the universe, they will be destroyed at some point, but time will remain. Time is immutable. Even the atoms of the universe could merge into the Pradhan. But time is ever existent. It's like, in one sense, like the Supreme Being. So, here we go. So the verse, the first line is, we'll look at that. So, guna vyati karakaro. So, guna vyati kara means the interaction of the modes of material nature, and akaraha means it's the source of that interaction. So the first question that Vidura asks is about Raman's, how did he create the bodies of the inhabitants of the planetary systems? After creating the planets, how about the bodies? So the remainder of this chapter is going to be about that creation of the different bodies of the living beings. However, for now, we're hearing something about the second question about time. So guna vyatikara. Vyatikara, I looked it up, and it's in, actually, one purport Prabhupada said that guna vyatikara is a term that's used throughout the Bhagavatam, and it shows how the living entity is bewildered by the material nature. Vyatikara means anomalies or disturbances. So you can imagine it's like you have a mixing bowl, and if you start mixing ingredients in it, or even put it in a blender, it gets all mixed up. So similarly, the modes of material nature, they're described as always jostling for dependency in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna describes it as that. So they're always mixing and trying to overcome one over the other. It's like that, as if they're trying to always get up on top. So the gunas, the mixture of the gunas, is caused by time. But more important than that is we're concerned about the akaraha, which is the source of those modes. What is it, or who is it that is a source of the modes of material nature? So I wanted to give an analogy, just like if you're looking at this video here, we'll start the video. 1 minute little video. If you take silver chloride, as you see here, this is like silver salt, and you mix it with red clay, through a firing process, you can put it on glass, and when it's fired, it'll turn from red to gold. And the reason is because through the chemical process and through heating and firing it, the particles of silver chloride, they become much, much smaller in size, 1/1000th of a meter, or 10 times the size of a human hair, or it's estimated like half the width of a DNA strand. So tiny, tiny nanoparticles. Once they become that small and they're fired, then they change. And they give wonderful varieties of color in stained glass. So we go to the next slide. So another analogy, which we're going to try to incorporate or to utilize for the modes of material nature, is that of precious metals like gold and silver. So we know from the descriptions that have come prior about the creation of the material world, in its inert state, material nature is in the resting in pradhan, the total material energy that is unmanifested, and in a perfect state of equilibrium. Then, by the factor of time, it creates the Mahatattva, specifically the ahamkara, or the misidentification of the self with the material world, with a predominance of ignorance. It enters the Mahatattva, and then from that, the three modes of material nature, the gunas, are produced. So just like gold and silver, let's start the little 1-minute video here. Precious metals, they reflect invisible light, things that we can't see with our naked eye from the spectrum of light. So that's why when you polish gold or silver, it's brilliant. So it almost looks like a mirror. Just like pradhan, when it's in a state of equilibrium, everything is within it, but it's simply not manifested. But when you, through either chemical process or firing gold or silver down to 100 billionth of a meter or 100 nanometers, anything smaller than that, as soon as it becomes that small, a nanoparticle, then it starts to absorb light waves from the blue into the spectrum. And what happens is that as it becomes smaller and smaller, it starts to absorb more red light. Just like the pradhan, when it's influenced by time, it also reflects ignorance. So another amazing thing is not only size matters, but also shape matters. So just like what we're seeing here, these are vials of water that are mixed with nanoparticles dissolved in them. And when they're magnified to hundreds of thousands of magnification, their size, we find that silver rods, they make yellow color. Silver triangles, they make green color. And silver in the shape of prisms make blue color. So not only the size, but also the shape of the element also creates different hues. Similarly, the shape of our ahamkara, of our ignorance, it appears in different mixtures of the modes of nature. So our concern, not so much how we've been influenced by the gunas, but more important than that at the present would be this word akaraha. You know, just like kara, karan, akaranam. Kara means cause. So akara means, akaraha, sorry, means the source or the cause of the gunas. And that is time, which is a representation of the Lord. So going to the next slide, So guna, vyati, kara, karo, and then nirvishesho pratishtitaha. So nirvishesha, that's an easy word to recognize. That means without diversity. And apratishtaha means unlimited. So the second question that Vidura asked Maitreya was in relationship to describing time and its symptoms. So briefly, Maitreya is touching upon this question in 3 verses. Yesterday's verse, which Vidagdha Prabhu spoke on, and then today's verse, and then tomorrow's verse, which Mother Urmila is going to speak on. So in the next chapter, time will be dealt with. The entire chapter will be dedicated to time. But for now, this is just a summary, so we can imagine how these verses are packed with information. So, nirvishesha means without diversity. It means one without a second. That although it is indivisible, it's the cause of all division. Isn't that amazing? And that although it is varietyless, in other words, it's absolute, very important to understand. Absolute, it's only one thing and it is changeless. So although it itself is varietyless, still it's a source of all varieties that we find in this world. So nirvishesha is a property of time, and apratishtaha means it's unlimited. There's no beginning and there's no end. So we go to the next slide. The question that was touched upon yesterday was, what is time? So, oops, I went too fast. Modern physics, they cannot explain what time is. We can measure time, we can observe time, but we really can't describe what it really is. What it does, but not what it is. One can only understand what it is when it's in relationship to the Lord. All we can do is observe what it does. So we can know time by its symptoms and thus describe it. And those symptoms are change and motion. So just like you can get a thorn out by using a thorn, similarly, I am going to use examples from modern physics in order to illustrate how time is perceived in 4 ways: kinetic segmentation, motion parallax, time dilation, and space-time continuum. That's why I was saying that if you had the facility to watch the slides, they might be helpful, because they're a little bit difficult concepts for me to try and explain with how I understand it. So the first one we're going to start with is, I'm going to play this for a minute. In Singapore, in Singapore, at the one of the airports there, they have this display. It's the largest kinetic art sculpture in the world. So this is little brass droplets. There's over 1,200 of these brass droplets, and even though they're segmented, they're individual little droplets. When they're used as a group, then they give this kind of effect, all these amazing shapes. So that's kinetic segmented art. So let's move off of this and go to the next slide. How come it's not going? Okay, so that's kinetic art. Now this is something that can be used to explain time, which is called kinetic segmentation. So again, we can't understand what time is without reference to the Lord, but at least we can perceive it. Now, if someone asked you, how can you understand time? Can you taste it? Can you smell it? Can you touch it? No, there's no particular sense that you can use to perceive time. As a matter of fact, if you shut off all of your senses, you can't see, hear, smell, taste, or touch, then it would be very difficult to understand the passage of time other than maybe your thoughts. But you can perceive it through using your senses, specifically by looking at using your eyes. So that's why we're using kinetic segmentation to demonstrate this. So I've shown this before, so it's probably no surprise to people that are devotees that are looking at this. Here's a shape, a segmented shape, that's very difficult to discern when it's frozen, as if frozen in time. But as soon as you turn time back on, or in other words, add change and specifically motion to the image, watch what happens. I hope you can see that. This is actually an image of a family of dogs, a mother dogs with the pups playing around her. I'll play it one more time. So the significance of this is when it's frozen in time, you can't really discern what it is. But as soon as time acts through change and motion, then you can discern what's going on. So the important point here is that through change and motions, we can, although we can't directly see time or perceive time, but we can perceive its action on matter, its action on space. That's the only way we can know of it, because it's so subtle. Because it's so subtle, modern physicists up to the level of Albert Einstein misunderstood fundamentally what time is, and that we'll try and bring out here. So everything is under time. All bodies in the universe, even the atoms, are destroyed by the primeval time element, but time changes all, but it's the only thing in the universe that is timeless. So therefore, it's a representation of the Lord. So that's one way you can see time in one aspect using one tool. Here's another tool. This is called motion parallax. Very simple example. It's just like if you were traveling in a high-speed vehicle, you would see things that are close, like for instance, fence posts or these telephone poles are going by very quickly, whereas things that are in the distance, like farmhouses and hills and trees, they move very slowly. Similarly, in physics, it's understood that time moves more slowly, being manipulated by velocity. So we're going to go to the next slide. Now this is something called time dilation that I'm going to try to illustrate. So you can make a clock out of anything, even dripping water, sand. Actually, I just recently saw on YouTube this amazing clock you can make out of sand. Even electrical impulses, they go through quartz crystals, winding up of a spring. Anything that has constant motion can be used as a clock. So in this example, we're going to use a ray of light going between two mirrors, upper and lower. As the ray of light hits 1 meter and then goes to the next, it forces the clock to move. So both of these mirrors are identical and they're stationary within space. Therefore, the time that you see passing by is uniform. They are in agreement with each other. But the interesting thing that happened is when one of the clocks is stationary, you see it is unaffected. The light beam goes vertically up and down. But the top clock you see it's moving through space at a certain velocity. And as you can see, the clock is moving slower in relationship to the stationary clock. And one way to explain this is that you see the light beam, it's not going up and down vertically, but rather it has to travel at a faster, or rather a greater rate at an angle in order to cover the same kind of distance. So therefore its clock appears to be slower. Another amazing thing about relativity is that the clock that's moving, which is actually the upper clock, if you were traveling at the same speed as the upper clock, which is actually in motion, you would not feel that you were moving at all. Rather, the stationary clock on the bottom would be, you'd get the sense that that was moving, and its clock was moving slower than your clock. You would see nothing at all. So this is called time dilation, and it's how physicists understand through the Einstein's general, what's it called? General relativity. What's the full name? Theory of general relativity. That all time is subject to manipulation by space, which we have a contention with, according to the Bhagavatam. Not that time is being dilated, but rather it's affecting everything else. So let's go to the next slide. This is my fourth. Excuse me. Did I miss something? I'm sorry, Bruce. I got to go back. Did I miss something? I thought I missed the slide. Huh. All right. Anyway, maybe I'm just off here. Anyway, here's another slide of Albert Einstein. Here's a quote. He says that time doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time is just an agreed upon construct. We have taken distance, one rotation of the Earth and one orbit of the Sun, divided it into segments, and then given those segments labels. While it has its uses, we have been programmed to live our lives by this construct as if it were real. We have confused our shared construct with something that is tangible and thus have become its slave. So we certainly have to agree with most of what's being said. But Srila Prabhupada in the purport brings up some very important points about time that any speculative scientist, without being guided by the Shastra and the Guru, will not understand. So again, we're looking at this second part of the line, the second line of the verse, nirvishesho pratishtita, without differentiation, unchangeable, absolute, and unlimited, without beginning or end. So nirvishesho pratishtita, it differs from modern worldview of cosmology and astrophysics, which is based on Einstein's theory of general relativity, in that time is changeless, and it is time only that affects change upon matter. So Srila Prabhupada states in the purport that metaphysically, beyond our senses, time is distinguished as absolute and real. So in other words, it's not subject to the relativity of time, space, or velocity. Absolute time is continuous and is unaffected by the speed or slowness of material things. So Srila Prabhupada is directly addressing time-space here. Time is astronomically and mathematically calculated in relation to the speed, change, and life of a particular object. So this is something that, of course, modern physics doesn't understand, because they only can deal with what's in front of them. They don't know about different life forms, such as on other planets, like, for instance, the life of the demigods, or even we can see the life of an ant, or the life of an insect. Some insects only live for a few hours, so their whole life experience, just like we experience 100 years, they experience their life, but for us it appears to be just a few hours, and for them it's a lifetime. So according not only to speed and change, but also to particular object. But factually, however, time has nothing to do with the relativities of things. Rather, everything is shaped and calculated in terms of the facility offered by time. Now, we can understand that the reason why it's you can't understand that it isn't time that's being warped or manipulated is because the only way that we can perceive time is by looking at its effect. So naturally, you would think that time itself is being affected. But in the Bhagavatam, here we read, nirvishesho, pratishtita, it's never affected. So Srila Prabhupada is very strongly making this point. Nirvishesha means without diversity, absolute and unchangeable. So here's another quote from Albert Einstein. The distinction between the past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. So we can agree with this statement, not in whole, but certainly in part. So here, Srila Prabhupada points out, time is not subject to any form of psychology, nor the moments objective realities in themselves, but they are dependent on particular experiences. So what does Srila Prabhupada mean here? What I understand is that time is not subject to our understanding of it. However powerful a speculator or scientist we may be, and however powerful our instruments are, whatever understanding we come to time, it doesn't affect time. Nor the moments of time are the objective realities. Just as when we have dreams, those are subjective illusions. Similarly, time, even if we don't understand, even if we're bewildered by what appears to be moment by moment, they are not objective realities. Just like if I have a dream being eaten by a tiger, it's very, very real to me. I'm sweating and my heart is pounding. I'm actually being physically affected by it. But the person next to me is simply laughing because he understands that it's an illusion. An objective reality is something like if I hit my toe on the bedpost, anybody can feel that. So the moment-to-moment experiences that we have, they are not actually objective realities. They are actually, in a sense, an illusion. But they, as Srila Prabhupada would say, they meaning the moments or the slices of time, the experiences of now, they're dependent on experiences of events. So in the previous purport, Srila Prabhupada also said that time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. So there's the Vedic literatures are replete with examples of this. Just like there is Maharaj Revata, he went to the planet of Lord Brahma with his daughter Revati. And while they were waiting for Lord Brahma to finish listening to a concert, when Lord Brahma heard him request a suitable husband for his daughter, Lord Brahma explained to Maharaj Revata that eons had passed on the earth planets while they were waiting for what seemed to be only a short time on the Satyaloka. And all of his family members, his entire dynasty had vanished, and no one had any recollection of them at all. It was as if they ceased to exist. So in a sense, time is an illusion because it's completely relative to space, to time, and the bodies that we are inhabiting. Now, okay, this slide here. So this is going to be a short little video. This is perhaps the hardest thing to try to explain, and that's the slices of what's referred to as space-time. Because in Einstein's theory of general relativity, he fused space and time together because, according to physics, one cannot exist without the other, which is partially true. So if you were to imagine all the events that are taking place all over the universe happening in one single moment throughout space, on this planet and on other planets of the universe, all the different galaxies, just like a little slice of time, then you can call that the present, or a little slice of now. So if you were to take all the space in the universe and all the time and compress it all together and put it all into like one loaf of stuff, that would be called time space. And if you were to slice up each piece of that time space, that would be a moment of the present or a moment of now. So that's what you're watching now. Now I'm gonna pause. Started it over again. Sorry. I have to pause this. Let's go a little ahead in time. There. Okay, we'll pause it right there. So in the 4th century, there was a Christian saint, a bishop. His name was Saint Augustine, and he wrote an autobiography called Confessions. Before, or in his youth, he had given up the faith and gone off on his own, and then later on in life, I believe in his 30s, he became very devoted and extremely accomplished, intelligent person. So he wrote this Confessions, and in there's an interesting a reflection upon time, and specifically about duration. So events are intervals. We colloquially, anyway, we generally refer to them as either being long or short. So he's reflecting on this. So how can that be? Because you have tense, you have present tense, past tense, and then future tense. So in any one of those states, how can you ever give a duration to time? Because if something is in the past, then that would mean that the past ceased to exist. It's non-existent. If it's non-existent, then it should have no properties. In other words, you can't explain something in the past or doesn't exist as have any properties such as being long or short in duration. And then as far as the present tense, how can it have a duration? Because present means it's durationless. It cannot be long or short. So what is this perception that we have of an event being long or short? And there's no question of the future tense being long or short because it hasn't happened yet. So as he was thinking about this, the answer came to him that actually what we're doing is we're measuring our memories of our experiences. And then that led him to the radical conclusion that past and future exists only in our minds. So Albert Einstein, I think in 1904 or 1905, when he wrote his special theory of relativity, um, he also came up with a very similar conclusion, which is partially correct, and which we would also have to say for realized beings, yogis, or very highly elevated beings. They also have Tri Kala Gya. Just as Arjuna, he saw the Virata Rupa, and when he saw all of the events of the universe, past, present, and future, and everything, all sensations, all in one place in one time. He also saw that all the soldiers on the battlefield of Kurukshetra had already been killed and were entering into the mouths of eternal time. So how is that? Uh, uh, how is it that Trikalagya is possible? Does that mean that all events, past, present, and future, have already happened? And therefore you're just peering into that, just like when you peer into the time-space continuum, you can see all things, all space, and all time in one place. It's something like that. It's just like if you took a pocket watch and you wound it up. Once it's wound, then it goes in a sequence until it gets to the end of the spring cycle. But everything is within that wind. Once it starts up and starts ticking, just events are unfolding. Um, so even though events are unfolding and it's all within the spring action within that watch, or let's say a clock. Just like, anybody remember cuckoo clocks? When I was young, I saw some amazing cuckoo clocks, and they're really fascinating, especially when you're a child. You're just absorbed in it. You're watching the ticking of the seconds go off and the minutes. So you wait till the top of the hour or half hour so you can see the cuckoo bird come out and chirp. So because we're absorbed in it, we're absorbed in the moment instead of the whole thing, because we don't have the perception to see the entire thing, although it's already happened in a sense. It's simply unfolding in sequence, but everything is already set up. Just like a watch, when you wind it up, it's just a matter of it ticking away till the end. Similarly, universe, all events, all space, and all time is already predestined. So therefore, that's why the question of free will comes into place. If time, space is a continuum, then where does free will come into place if it's already laid out? And simply we're in the illusion of a particular slice of time. So I will approach that in a minute, but let's just finish this little video and I'll try to explain what is a time-space continuum. So here we have, let's get this off pause. Okay, so here we have little slices of time, but what if there was an alien that was 200 light years away on his planet, and then we have a person here sitting on a park bench on our planet? They're both stationary. So even though they're in such a far distance away, if you slice a piece of space-time, both of their experiences of time will be the same. They'll be in agreement. However, if you take that alien and he starts pedaling away from the planet of Earth, even though he's so far away, if he pedals away at a very slow rate, then his clock will start to be different from the Earth clock, because we know, according to a theory of relativity, that as soon as you add velocity, then it makes our clock slower. So therefore, the perception of time for the alien that's going away from the Earth is different from that of what we would experience on Earth. So that difference would be very, very small, just like a billionth of a second. However, because of the distance, like it's like 200 or 200 light years away, by the time it got to the Earth planet in space, it would be very, very great indeed. So much so that the difference between our perceptions of time would be profound. For instance, the alien would experience not the man sitting on the bench as an adult, but not even as a baby, but it would go all the way back through time, maybe let's say 2 centuries to the time of Beethoven. That's what his experience of our time would be because of time dilation or space-time. And then if the alien, if instead of going away from the Earth, this is how the theory works, if he was to turn around and start pedaling leisurely towards the Earth at the same velocity, then he would experience his slice of time differently. He would experience time in relationship to the Earth as the future, 200 years into the future. So this example is, maybe teleporting or something like that. So that's how Einstein came up with the theory of one of the aspects of the theory of relativity, and therefore maybe time travel is possible. Whether that's possible or not, we're really not concerned with. The point is that time-space has some truth to it. The illusion that we have about segments of times, we're experiencing one after the other. The reason we can't see past, present, and future, Tri Kalagya, is because we're absorbed in what's going on materially at this moment because we're attached to it. And you can think of it like this. If you're looking at a movie, the reason why it appears to be so real is because even though they're individual frames that are traveling or moving past light at 24 frames per second, at that particular speed, motion is synchronized with the motion that we experience in the real world. So therefore, you cannot tell the difference between motion in a picture, a moving picture, and motion that you experience every day. You can't tell what is real and what is unreal. However, if you're talking about free will, everything is already wound up and we're simply experiencing as it unfolds. Where does free will come into account? Yes, it's like a film. A film has already been made and you're simply watching it. Because you're absorbed in it, you're just looking at the moment. However, the film has no free will. The film is dead matter. The film has already been created. But the observer is what we're concerned about. The observer has free will, and he needs to break his attention away from the movie so he doesn't have the emotions, the sad parts, the happy parts. He's not so absorbed in it, but when he's able to turn his face away, then he understands that what he was experiencing was an illusion. So indeed, there is free will, but unless we understand that we are spirit, we will never know that. We're caught in the continuum, space-time continuum. Okay, so we're almost done here. What is the time? Oh my God, it's 7 o'clock. I'm so sorry. These were difficult concepts, so it takes more time to explain. Anyway, I'll try and finish up very quickly. 2 last slides. So then the last 2 lines of the verse was Purushas tad upadanam atmanam lulayasrajat. So Purusha refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, person, and then tat is that time. Upadanam, that time is an instrument in the hands of the Supreme Lord, Atmanam, the material creation, because Atmanam means he is personal energy. But oops, I went too far. But Lilaya Srajat means that the creation of this material world is his pastime. So if you think about it, it's just like time affects all of us. It affects all of matter because we're absorbed in it. We are affected by it. But for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's has full control of it. That's why in the verse Maya Dakshena Prakriti Suite Sacharacharam, that's Prabhupada quotes that verse in Bhagavad Gita at the end of the purport. So the Lord controls all of material nature. He is just like a violin player. The violin, it produces sound. It's an instrument in the hands of an expert musician. It is the material cause. When the musician plays the violin, it's not that he opens his mouth and produces the sound, but rather the material cause, which is the violin produces the sound, but ultimately it's the musician that is the cause of the sound because he's utilizing the instrument. Without the musician, the violin could make no sound. It's just dead matter. Uh, uh, when we add the words lila asrajat, lila means pastime. So in other words, when you have a musician who's very expert at his craft, then when he's playing the violin, it seems like it's effortless on his part. It's simply enjoyment for him. It's no problem at all because he's practiced so much. He's got this Shakti, this ability. So in the Vishnu Purana, there's that famous verse, Parasha Shakti or Vividaya Shruyate, that the Supreme Lord is full of energies, and those energies are so potent that without endeavor, everything is set into motion. So that's my one understanding of Lila Yasrajat. So